Earlier this month, at the third edition of History Literature Festival held at Christ University, a session titled Stones and Shadows trace South India's journey from prehistory all the way to megalithic tradition. The discussion examined the indigenous evolution of culture in peninsular India, challenging the north-centric gaze on its history. While megaliths, the large stone structures and monuments used largely for burial purposes and also for commemorative purpose are generally associated with the Iron Age. The exact origin of the megalithic tradition is shrouded with mystery, or largely we don't know exactly when the megalithic tradition have begun. However, when asked about its possible antecedent, senior archaeologist Ravi Korisettar, who is an honorary director at the Robert Bruce Foote Sangankallu Archaeological Museum at Bellary, hinted that possibly the beginning could be traced at what we in archaeology call the Southern Neolithic period. An era or period which is characterized not just with the domestication of plants and animals, the beginning of farming, but also by ash-mounds, which are a heap of vitrified cow dung, by grinding and polished tools, and also very importantly by black and red ware pottery. When he spoke about the Southern Neolithic, he also mentioned a very important site which where he himself had worked, and there was a Bellary archaeological project, and he was the director of that project, a site called Sangankallu. Sangankallu Kugal complex comprised of multiple sites and hillocks where there are cave paintings and also engravings on the wall, and the site is sort of traced from a Neolithic all the way to megalith and also have certain evidence of Iron Age. So in this week's column, I'll be talking about different characteristics of Southern Neolithic, exactly what is Southern Neolithic and how it is different from the Neolithic in general, what we read in our textbooks, and also about the site of Sangankallu. Hi, my name is Disha Aluwalia, and I'm an archaeologist and I write regularly here at ThePrint on archaeology, conservation, and everything related to archaeology. The term Neolithic was actually coined by John Lubbock when he propounded the three age system theory, where there is Stone Age, Copper Age, and then Iron Age. And within the Stone Age, the last stage of the Stone Age is a Neolithic period, where which is characterized by the beginning of agriculture or the early farming stage. Here, the plants and animals are domesticated, and it's a departure from the hunting gathering way of life. Although a lot of communities coexisted, what I mean by this that there were communities who were still engaging in foraging and hunting and gathering, and on the other hand, there were some communities who decided to have a sedentary way of life and indulge in domestication of plants and animals. Now, the date of Neolithic in India and as in the rest of the world also is not similar, whereas we find sites like Mehergarh which is dated very early on, where the early farming stage is noted quite early, about 8th to 7th millennium BCE. And on the other hand, you have sites like Burzahom in Kashmir, where the date of Neolithic early farming in that region is about 2100 BCE to 2200 BCE, and the Burzahom Neolithic and the Neolithic in the northern Himalayan region is known as the Northern Neolithic. So, as suggested by these two sites, even in the north of the subcontinent, northern half subcontinent, the dates or the beginning of Neolithic could be seen varied. Whereas you have Burzahom, which is contemporary to Harappan civilization, you have Mehergarh, which is the antecedent of Harappan culture or the beginning of the urban phase of the Bronze Age. So when the sites like Mehergarh are studied, one can think that there is a linearity or Lubbock's 3-8 system would stand a test of time or can stand a chance in the subcontinent or in largely in India. But actually, when you look at sites in southern India or eastern India or in northern India or in Deccan, you see the beginning or the Neolithic settlements, the farming settlements in different parts of the country. You understand, you come to a conclusion that a 3-8 system has no chance in the subcontinent. It's not correct at all. And Neolithic even the age which Lubbock said is one age and there is one beginning and the one end doesn't stand at all. It's not true at all. And in India, there are different Neolithic communities have but different timelines and very indigenous characteristics, very regional characteristic. So just like Mehergar, which is an index site, which talks about a very early beginning of agriculture, you have something called the Southern Neolithic, which is very regional to southern India and which has its own characteristics and its own beginning and very indigenous beginning as per the landscape. In southern India, the beginning of farming goes back to tentatively to 2400 to 2000 BCE, with the exception of sites like Vatkal, which is dated to 3000 to 2700 BCE, and Kodekal, which goes to 3000 BCE. Kodekal is in Tamil Nadu. And breaking these sites sort of break the linearity of history. And just like Burzahom, these settlements are, if I have to put largely in the context for your understanding, the settlements are largely contemporary to the Harappan. But I just want to say that when we talk about the Harappan, we immediately think about the northwestern India or the northwestern frontier, and we talk about southern India. We forget that there are other settlements in between as well, in the east, in the southernmost tip, and also in the northernmost tip of the subcontinent. And these settlements, which are in between, are also some sites like which is we call as the Deccan Chalcolithic, the Deccan in the Deccan region were copper using communities. In Ganga and Nadwab, you have OCP coming up, which again is a copper using settlement. So, you have different societies choosing to have a different way of life. Some used copper, whereas southern Neolithic occupants of people in southern India who engaged in farming did not use a lot of copper. There is copper found, but the copper was not in the same amount you find in the neighboring areas, such as in the Deccan region or in the northern region. Here, what one see is that there is black and red ware pottery, there are stone tools, and there is very unique features which are regional to that particular area. During the excavation and at Tekalkota in Karnataka in 1965, two phases of Neolithic were actually noted. The first phase was characterized by plain or burnished gray pottery, handmade pottery, which were also painted. There were microliths. Now, microliths are stone tools, so very micro stone tools, which are found across the country, but here they were more regional. There are also jewelry items such as beads being found, which are made of semi-precious stones and gold. And during this phase, a few copper objects are also found. In the second phase, black and red ware pottery makes its appearance at that particular time. In the early literature, the presence of black and red ware pottery was correlated with Neolithic, which continues into the Megalithic and Iron Age period, which is an important aspect, something which we all should understand when we talk about the Iron Age. And just like Tekalkota, there are so many other sites, and it's very hard to name all of them, but there are so many sites which are Neolithic sites and give similar chronology like Vatkal. And even at Vatkal, there is presence of iron. So what happens is what is happening in southern India is that there is beginning of agriculture, there is less copper, but that at one point of time, iron becomes is have become part of the cultural material assemblage, and then you have megaliths. But that progression is very smooth, and there is no break in between. So if we have to talk about the antecedent of Iron Age also, not just megaliths, but Iron Age in largely, we have to understand that Southern Neolithic plays a very important role. At Sangankallu, which is a very big archaeological complex, which is about 1,000 acres, spanned over 2,000 years of history. It was excavated first in 1946 by B. Subbarao, and then it was also excavated in 1969 by Z.D. Ansari and M.S. Nagaraju Rao. Also talk about the beginning of agriculture and also the overlap. I also want to point out that unlike Vatkal and Kodikal, which has given a very early age of Neolithic in southern India, Sangankallu is not that early. The date is about 2000 BCE, but there are earlier sites I've mentioned. However, it does tell us that there is a smooth transition that is happening from Neolithic to Megalithic, and that's a very important point to keep in mind. At the excavation of Sangankallu in 1969, the excavation proved the possibility of an ash mound, which is an important feature of Southern Neolithic. Now, ash mound is nothing but vitrified clay gathered in one place and then it's burned periodically. Upon excavation of ash mounds and their chemical analysis, one can understand the climatic conditions of the past or reconstruct the climatic condition of the past. Later on, it was excavated by Dr. Korisettar and his colleagues from 1997 to 2005, and they have excavated the habitation mound at Sangankallu. As I've mentioned, it comprises of multiple sites and hills, and it's a huge complex in itself. So when they excavated one of the habitational site, they got the date from the site. They also understood the domestication, the beginning of domestication, and it spread all over the region. From Neolithic phase, the excavations clearly concluded that from Neolithic phase, the occupants of Sangankallu marched into the Neolithic megalithic transition phase, and that really was the beginning of megaliths. And if you go to Sangankallu, you will find both megaliths, you'll find ash mounds as well as rock engravings in that region. Here at Hiriguda, one of the large hill at Sangankallu, they have also found a grinding stone axe factory, a manufacturing center for stone tools, which is it's not unique to Sangankallu, but it's important because of how it helps us understand the Neolithic community in southern India. There's also evidence of Iron Age noted at the site. When Doran Fuller studied the archaeobotanical remains at Sagnakalu, he found that they were consuming millets, bristly folktail, horse gram, and wheat and barley probably also is part of the diet, and that could have come from Deccan region. Wheat and barley could have come from Deccan region, as per Fuller. They domesticated goats and sheep also along with cattle. Therefore, Sangankallu, though is not the earliest site as I've mentioned earlier, but it shows us the continuity from Neolithic to megalithic culture and possibly hints at the beginning of early Iron Age as well. And if sites like these really need to be studied. Now, once we analyze the southern Neolithic complex like Sangankallu and numerous excavation across the state border, it is important to discuss in once we study this again in the new light, in the light of new data that is published, we can possibly understand the current dates that are coming of Iron Age coming from these regions. It's very important to understand that largely Iron Age, the beginning of Iron Age is placed at various sites, such as at various sites in Tamil Nadu, the beginning of Iron Age is linked with BRW. We have to understand that Black and Red Ware or BRW is found in Neolithic period as well. So when we talk about the beginning, we have to be really, really careful, and we have to really understand how the transition really happened. Were there other parameters apart from Black and Red Ware? Because you see this particular pottery is found in both complexes. Is not just a marker of just Iron Age, but actually it's a marker of Neolithic as per earlier studies which have been done in larger area. So if we extend the timeline of Iron Age to 3rd millennium BCE, or even go further, whatever we do, we must reconsider Neolithic and megalithic settlements in this conversation. Without them, the narrative is going to be incomplete, and until we do so, it will remain incomplete. There's a lot that goes in the background. If there is any new discovery which is announced, there is a lot that goes into the background, and there's a lot that needs to be done after. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and subscribe to ThePrint and follow Print on all of your social media platforms. Thank you so much for listening, and hopefully we'll meet you soon again next week with another interesting archaeo story.